I'm not saying that Lewis is over the hill. I think it would be out of whack to characterise Lewis at this stage in his career as that just yet. There's not evidence enough to talk that way, yeah. But equally, I'm not saying Lewis isn't in his prime, and I think if he's going to beat Max Verstappen in 24 or 25 or 26, he will need to be.
It's not like they can't do pit stops. It's just clearly they've decided to prioritise the car and on-track operation aside from pit stops. But the game has changed. Red Bull are best in class in every single facet. That's the level now, not the level you set. You raised the bar in 2014. Red Bull have said, okay, we see your bar and we're going to raise it even further.
To publicly admit, you know what, we never really needed to be good at pit stops. We had a fast car. It's insane to me. We're talking about you're in the relegation zone of pit crews. For you to be a top Formula One team, that's unacceptable.
Gosh, what are we doing?
They don't know that they're not the benchmark, Cam. They don't know that they're not the benchmark.
But how mad is that, bruv? That they've got like an unconscious incompetence that they don't need. That's the worst level, Mahad, that we're talking about, bruv. To not know that you've got deficiencies, that you are incompetent, is like, that's like lost battalion, bruv. It's almost like there's no coming back from that. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shakedown. With me, as always, my co-host Baxty and guest friend of the show, Mahad. How are we doing, chaps? It doesn't matter how you're doing.
Oh, yes.
I've been waiting to become the victim of that.
Yeah, I nearly missed it without my timing is all off, man. Baxty can tell you, I don't get it right too often these days. It's a PhD level skill, that getting the rock chat down. No, but seriously, chaps, how are we doing?
Good, mate.
Absolutely fantastic, man. How are you, Cam?
Blessed and highly favoured, sir. I'm here, and I'm here to pod, and we've got to talk about some things, haven't we? Because it was techie. Matt, talk to me first, brother. How did you ingest the Grand Prix yesterday? In a few words or less, what did you think of the Grand Prix?
I think it shocked how I expected it to, with Max just slicing through the field and doing what he's always done throughout the season and getting his 50th win. Just a masterful drive from him. But nursing those issues, there was a bit of jeopardy there. And it did give us a little bit of excitement. Tantalized us a little bit. It said, look, this is what you could have if there was a little bit of competition in Formula One at the moment. And that's what we had. We had different leaders of the race. We had somebody on pole that ended up 6th for some reason, that we're going to talk about. But yeah, it was a good race overall for me. What about you?
It was decent, bro. It was decent. And you touch on the first agenda item there, Mad. Like I've seen various different characterizations of Max Verstappen's race, from it might be his best drive to it was all tinfoil hat settings and it was all a bit of a facade. The brake problems weren't even a thing. That was just Max Verstappen doing a Lewis Hamilton. Baxty, characterise in a couple of words of or less Max Verstappen's performance. Did you rate it, brother, or not a big fan?
Yeah, it was one of his better drives. I mean, I think Miami, he'd be hard pressed to beat that drive. But it was very controlled. Very controlled. He didn't exert himself. He didn't try and do it too quickly, which in the past I think he has tried to do. He's tried to be too quick in getting through the field. But he knew he had the pace to pick off Lewis and Lando and the other guys in front. He just bided his time. He knew that Red Bull would give him a strategy that would absolutely work. They'd give him good pit stops. Well, one good pit stop in his case. Yeah, no, it was a really controlled, really clever drive from a guy that is just operating at the top of his game right now.
He's not bad, is he? He's not bad. I think going forward into future seasons, like we said on the last lap backs, that you're going to need, if you're going to beat that chap, you're going to need stuff. You're going to need a car that's fast. You're going to need your team to be operating at the highest level and not fudging up pit stops left, right, and centre. But I digress. We'll get onto that in short order. I would agree with you, guys. I think that was a serious drive from Max Verstappen, and I think it was underrated. I think it almost flew under the radar. If in equal-ish machinery, you still managed to beat a Lewis Hamilton who was on a bloody charge, who was ridiculously good all weekend, and Lando Norris similar. I think you've got to, as far as Max Verstappen seasons, this has to be one of his drives of the season. Surely, man.
Yeah, definitely. I think just the whole situation with qualifying not going too well and him just recovering from that. And I think Red Bull sometimes, especially on track start, the surface is not too good. They can kind of recover their situation. But I feel like with the... have I frozen? I'm sorry. Have I actually frozen?
No, you're good.
Sorry. I just my screen froze. Sorry, apologies. Yeah. So Red Bull sometimes with these sprint races that are coming way too often at the moment, they have issues setting up the car, and I feel like they had to compromise that ride height, and that's kind of put a dampener, because what Red Bull do, if they do have a bad Friday in practice, they rectify it on Saturday in practice. So the fact that they don't get the opportunity in these sprint races kind of puts them in the back foot or not putting it in the right operational window. And Max Verstappen had to kind of adapt his driving style and adapt his approach in terms of the brake issue, the tyres not being too particularly good because they had no hard running. And to overcome those situations and still kind of be still the fastest man on track. He's effing and blinding on the radio, but he's still pumping out purple sectors. So it doesn't really matter. He's really in his element at the moment. And I think bar like what Baxty said about Miami and Japan, that's one of his better drives this season. And he's just showing that, look, he's worth every one of those 50 wins at the moment.
Levels, chaps, levels. And on that note, before we go to the next topic, chaps, I want you to give me, I think we'll get to this in a bit, but if... To save a dying puppy in equal machinery, is there a man not named Max Verstappen on the grid who you think could challenge Max Verstappen? I want you to give me a name, one name each. Mahad, Baxty, who are you picking to challenge Max Verstappen in equal machinery if there's a person that exists currently on the grid?
I would say Lewis Hamilton, of course.
All right.
I would also say Lewis. I was trying to work out whether you meant one lap or a whole season.
No,
I think
season.
Season, yeah, Lewis, yeah.
So, all right then. Okay, let me word the question in a different way. To save a dying puppy, who equal machinery, Lewis or Max, on the back of what we saw this weekend? Baxter, I'll go to you first.
I'm still inclined to lean towards Lewis, but that gap is shrinking with every lap of every race. And the gap isn't that big anyway. But I think purely just because of the battles that Lewis has gone through in his career, I would still back him. Whereas, Max, yes, he's had one really competitive season at the front. I want to see a bit more. And I've said this a lot before, but I just want to see a bit more competitiveness with Max.
Fair play. Mad, talk to me, bro.
I'd say Lewis, because I've seen Lewis in maybe a dominant vehicle in this equal machinery with, let's say, Rosberg, and show that kind of dominance and show that consistency that Max Verstappen has shown. And even though I think Max Verstappen is like an android, he just doesn't make mistakes at all. But I think without the absence of pressure, I think it's a bit easier to do that. And when pressure's in the room, you may see some circumstances that we saw maybe in 2021 where the particular talent that we see of Max Verstappen may be under duress. So I think Lewis, just because 7 titles, he's been there, done that, all types of scenarios. Even in his rookie season, he's going against a champion. So, and I'm not. This is nothing to water down Max, because Max, look, 50 wins now. This guy's an all-time legend already, and he's not even 30. So, it would go down to the wire again if it was between those two. And I think out of just everybody else on the grid as well, Lewis has got that experience, bar maybe Fernando Alonso. But we haven't seen that in a very long time, Fernando Alonso in a dominant machinery. Whatever.
Yeah, you boys are nailing it, man. I don't want to labour this point, but I feel like it's this subject topic has given birth to itself, so we might as well address it while we're here. Yeah, I was getting into it with Clinton earlier on a stream, And Clinton's assertion was that Lewis Hamilton is in his prime. And I was like, hang on, mate. F1 is a young man's game, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Lewis is over the hill. I think it would be I would be out of whack to characterize Lewis at this stage in his career as that just yet. There's not evidence enough to talk that way, yeah. But equally, I'm not saying Lewis isn't in his prime. And I think if he's going to beat Max Verstappen in 24 or 25 or 26, he will need to be, which concerns me as a Lewis Hamilton fan. Chaps, that's all that was saying. That Baxty hit me.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think if you're looking at Lewis's prime, you would probably say second half of 2018 to 2020, all through that period. And I think he definitely made more mistakes in 2021 than he had done previously, and I think that's when maybe there was a slight dip in performance. But we're talking about a peak that not many drivers had ever hit, and I think Max is the only one I've seen, bar maybe Schumacher, who have ever got close to that kind of level that Lewis was at in that particular time period. But I think what makes Max slightly different is just the lack of mistakes that he's making.
Bruv, he's not making any mistakes at all. Not of consequence, at least. Mahad, do you see where I'm going with this, bruv? As far as Lewis's timeline and his rate of growth as versus Max Verstappen's, it's almost like, as far as their trajectory in terms, if you're going to correlate that to their age, it's almost like Max is doing one of these, and Lewis, if not already, will at some point in the next 2 or 3 years they'll kind of meet on incline, decline, respectively.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we're not acting like if they're playing chess here and it's just a mental game. It's physical. There's going to be some deterioration with age, and as Max goes more into his prime, because I don't even think we've seen Max's ceiling yet. So as he ascends, we've seen Lewis Hamilton for many, many, many years just maintain a certain level, which is maybe unattainable for a lot of drivers, and to just outright ignore like there's going to be some deterioration, there's going to be some mistakes here and there. We kind of saw them creeping in 2021, uncharacteristic mistakes that you wouldn't see in 2019 or 2020. But that's kind of balanced off and counteracted with these experience, and he's been there, done that attitude. So there are some facets of Lewis Hamilton's game that will deteriorate, but there are some that are just going to get stronger and stronger because he has more experience than everybody else. So it's really a trade-off of that.
Yeah, I don't hate it, Mad. I don't hate it. And the only reason why I'm bringing this, I was listening to Dana White talking about, I don't know if any of you guys listening and watching out there are UFC fans, and Volkanovski over the weekend has had not a mini mental breakdown, but he's getting to that age where people are starting to talk about retirement. And I parlayed that back into Abu Dhabi 21. And I've always been convinced, had Lewis won that year, that season, that potentially he would have just said, you know what, that's me, let me hang up my Nomex. And Dana White trots this out a lot, right? If you're thinking about retirement, if the R word even enters your head, then that's the time to retire now. But anyway, I don't know. Maybe he'll do a Tom Brady and shut my mouth and prove me wrong. I hope bloody so going into next year. Go on then, let's get into the weeds of this this disqualification stuff first. I spent a whole stream earlier on talking about everything apart from the disqualification, and everybody wanted to only hear about that. So for those of you who have been hiding under a rock, here's what's happened. Post-race, there was a review of 4 cars. The first 4, Lewis, Lando, Max, and Charles.
Yeah, Charles. Yeah,
Charles' car. Oh, yeah, because Charles got DQ'd. Okay, so they've looked at 4 cars, and 2 of those have got disqualified: Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, because the excessive wear on the skid plank or whatever they're calling it. Mahad, I'm going to come to you first, bruv. How did you ingest this disqualification, and did you think it was fair or a tad too harsh?
I don't think the disqualification's harsh. Listen, if the rules are the rules, it's quite hard. Look, when it comes to technical breaches, if you breach that technical breach, you are going to get disqualified. What my thinking is if 2 or 4 So I understand that the FIA have to do little samples here because they're not going to do 100-point checks, for example, on all 20 cars, especially if they're all compliant. But if 50% of your sample has been impacted and these guys are going to get disqualified, wouldn't you think there's going to be some due diligence here?
I mean,
that you got to let's check, at least check the teammates of these drivers.
If you had some common sense, Mahad, but so a big if there talking about the FIA, right?
So I'm not against them being disqualified. If you breach the rules, you breach the rules, right? But to have a sample of 50% have been caught, and you not to look at everybody else is a bit miffing to me. Like, even if it takes a bit of a long time, you've allowed everybody to pack up their cars and go. It doesn't really make sense to me.
Standard FIA settings. Baxty, talk to me about this, bro. How do you characterise these DQs? Were you surprised or standard FIA?
When I saw what it was, and considering the history surrounding that, I knew exactly that they were going to get DQ'd because those rules are non-negotiable. Very much like Lewis's rear wing in 21. It doesn't matter how much you've gone over. I mean, apparently Leclerc's plank was the smallest it could be under, but it was still under, so therefore it's a DQ. I think what this highlights is the issue of the sprint and the effect that can have. I think this is an issue unique to Austin with the track surface characteristics that are there, with how bumpy it is. And I just think one practice session, I think, has caused these two teams grief. I agree completely with what Mahad said as well, with you've got to test George and Carlos's car as well, because it's very possible that they've got the same fault. And I think because of that, they should have tested all of the cars, just that one test, not everything, just that one test, just to make sure that, because people will now look at the results and go, well, there's two cars there that may not necessarily be legal. So for the avoidance of doubt, they should have just done plank tests on all 20 of the cars. The other 16 they hadn't tested to be sure and make sure that they have an accurate reading on the result.
Yeah, I don't hate it, Baxty. But again, let us not superimpose sensibilities onto the FIA that we know that they're absolutely not capable of. Yeah. Mahad, I'm going to talk to you about this, bro. Does this... We're going to have to get into Mercedes, right? Does this, in your mind, Mahad, sully the extent of Mercedes' progress then? Because I, as a Mercedes fan, or Lewis Hamilton fan at the very least, I watched Sunday and I was like, oh my God, this is the moment that we've been waiting for. New floor settings, and this is the rate of improvement, right? Everything else, every other time that I've seen Mercedes get a whiff of Max Verstappen, it's because of something that or Red Bull have fluffed their lines, or coming from 25th or whatever. That for once, or there's been a safety car. What we saw on Sunday, for the first time in a while, was a team in Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton being able to take it to Red Bull and Max Verstappen to keep them honest. True or false, Mahad? Am I being sold wolf tickets here, bruv? Is there more nuance to the narrative than I'm giving it credit for?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things that kind of maybe played into Mercedes' favor and out of your Mercedes and McLaren's hands. So, for example, Mercedes set their car up in a different way to Red Bull and McLaren in terms of just focusing on getting into the slow speed corners, getting good traction out of those. They wasn't as fast on top speed. They kind of focused on their strengths. And in terms of the upgrade, look, Mercedes said this out loud. They said this to people. Look, this is just a direction change on the floor. It's not something that's a fundamental, massive upgrade to move the car forward. What my thinking is lack of practice for Red Bull to set up the ride. They've had to raise their ride height because their car is usually loaded with downforce, especially, and the same with McLaren as well. Both of them have had to compromise their ride heights and obviously compromise their own performance on the weekend. And Mercedes haven't had to do that compromise. And there's just been a meeting between performances, and now Mercedes has moved forward in that race, especially in race pace. And they've always looked good in race pace. And the last stint as well, low fuel Mercedes is fast.
Rapid.
We've seen it in Silverstone. It's rapid. So it's not something, all the characteristics that we're known Mercedes are second in the constructors for a reason. All the characteristics, the small things here and there, the minutiae that they're good at kind of played into hands in that race. And obviously the tires as well, the fact that he was on mediums and the hards look absolutely horrendous. And Max is on hards, Lando's on hards, and they're slow and they're degging. And because of the setup, Hamilton's been able to take advantage of not only the Mercedes being good on low fuel, the setup that they've actually set up for that weekend, and being on mediums. I think it's kind of flat to deceive. And I always look at upgrades, and I'll kind of look at. I'm not saying that George is the second driver, but I always look at, okay, let's look at the floor here. Let's not look at the ceiling of the upgrade. Let's look at the floor. Let's see who can perform the bottom of the upgrade. And George is absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
You would assume that he would be closer up.
Yeah.
Throughout the weekend. And I don't know whether that's just him struggling with the car and so on, but like, let's say, for example, Oscar Piastri, when he was given the upgrades in Silverstone, he was in P3.
Yeah, he was gone.
So that shows, look, this is a major progress because both drivers are progressing here. And this is Lewis Hamilton, Coulter. I've seen him first and what he's done to Button, what he's done to Rosberg. This is Coulter, Hamilton. Last year, he was great. Yeah, before that, it was great. So we kind of have to bring those factors into play before saying, oh, this is a new floor. This is a completely... I think it's more like how McLaren was. McLaren performed well in Baku when they got a new floor, but it was a false dawn. It was just a change of direction.
Oh, bruv, why? What's with the negativity and the realism? Far too pragmatic over here, man. You can't just let me sip on my Mercedes copium for a bit, bruv. Like, Lewis is going to win another 3 championships from here on. Baxty, does Mahad make a good point though? Did that performance? Am I getting too hyper? Did that performance from Mercedes flatter to deceive because of the aforementioned?
So I said on the last lap that, the floor clearly has worked. And I think obviously that was before we know what we know now about ride heights and everything else. I think it's definitely a step in the right direction because Lewis doesn't normally get bullish about upgrades unless he feels they really work. So clearly he's feeling a lot more comfortable in the car. I think also Red Bull, we know, had to compromise their ride height. McLaren had to compromise their ride height because they clearly saw what was going on with the skidding. So I think there was also that at play, that Mercedes were just that bit quicker because they were riding lower. But I think for the intention of this update, which was to bring lessons forward for next year's car, I think this is definitely a step in the right direction, and that we won't see the full effect of it until testing next year because it will be with the full chassis aero upgrade that they've wanted to bring in, but they can't. And we've just got to sit tight and wait.
Yeah, you know what, Baxty? I'll say this, bruv. And this is the reason why I was getting probably a tad overly optimistic on the last lap when we were watching it live. It's been a while since I have seen Lewis at one with that W14 car, right? And you know that when he gets in his bag like that, when he's in that mode, he is a force of, or can be a force of nature, right? Unlike nearly any other driver that we've seen in history. And when I watched him go through, I watched the onboard of him in quali go through turn 19, and I was like, oh my God, this was like, it felt like a Max Suzuka Sector 1 moment, like Sector 3 Monaco Max. Like, it felt like one of those moments where man and machine had like come together in this symbiotic relationship. It just looked crazy, but the way that he attacked it was almost perfect. And I haven't seen that from Lewis in that car for yonks before. I kind of remember the last time when I saw him operating at that level, and it was a breath of fresh air, a new feeling, if you will, and that gives me hope and optimism for Mercedes and Lewis's chances going forward, even if I am over-egging it a tad, Mahad. I don't know.
You always have to. Do you know what? Yeah? You have to remember that since the new regs in 2022, Lewis Hamilton has not been comfortable in this car.
Mm.
So when he feels that, look, even the minute details of this new floor changing the way he feels when he's driving, that's improved it. You're going to get the best of Lewis Hamilton, right? And there's always, let's say, like a Lewis Hamilton tax. Like, he's going to go beyond whatever performance he can because he's so hungry, and the win's on the table. He's got Bono in his ear saying, look, the win possibly, that's going to push him forward a little bit more as well. So I would say, look, I agree with Baxty what he said about, look, it's a step in the right direction. You have to, if you're going completely in a different direction to what you've been doing for the last year and a bit, you're going to have to take it slow. You're going to have to try to understand the little details over. So if it's to change in the right direction and Lewis Hamilton already feels comfortable, it could be a step in the right direction. I'm just saying it's not the gong-ho, oh, we're going to gain half a second and be fighting Red Bull right now. This is just setting up for next year.
Oof. But Mahad, didn't they gain at least half a second? Well, okay, so I will say this. I'm not going to talk in quantums because it's hard to keep track of, right? But again, by virtue of the fact Max Verstappen's brake difficulties discounted, I can't remember when on pure pace over the course of a race distance, Mercedes had gotten anywhere near within striking distance. It's never been that close, right? Unless it's been safety car. There's always been some X factor, an act of God, or some weird thing happens to Max, and then all of a sudden, Singapore is an example where Max has come from. Well, Max isn't even there in the end, right? It's always been some erroneous circumstance, but this was on pure race pace. There were no erroneous. There were no weird things, right? It was a race from lights to flag, and at the end of it, near enough similar, well, slightly different strategies, but at the end of it, Lewis was there, ready to fight, but for bloody pit stops, so we would have had wheel to wheel combat towards in the last couple of laps.
I would say we're forgetting that Max started 6. If he started pole like he usually does,
True.
What does the gap look like?
Yeah, true, but only 6th, bro. It wasn't 14th. Like
no. It's not like
I mean?
It's not like the pass where he's coming from like 11th or whatever. It's only 6, but he didn't slice through the field as quick as he would, like, let's say in Belgium or something last year. I think it was more methodical. It was more like, look, we haven't really set this car up properly. Let's just get through this weekend type of thing.
It was clinical.
So I would say that was not the full capability of the Red Bull.
Yeah. Fair,
You're using it as a measuring stick. It's not.
And I suppose the extenuating circumstance, it tends to the track, right? This isn't your typical, it's not Silverstone. It's Austin, and it's very like stop-starty, like hard braking zones at the end of these long straights. So it's a bit, not quite
it's a Frankenstein of a track.
Yeah, bang.
It's just got loads of different types of kind of corners and details. So
yeah.
One thing I will say about Mercedes, they cleared Ferrari. So if that's the people that you was going toe to toe with throughout the season, you actually annihilated them. So that's a positive.
But man, that can't be the measuring stick. Surely that's like
that should be a track Ferrari's good at. I'm not sure why they didn't perform.
True, but they were good at it. This is the problem with Ferrari, right? Their post-mortem needs to be around the differential between their quali performance and their race, because they were Charles was ridiculously quick. I mean, he left 2/10 on the table at turn 19 almost just because, right, in the name of being conservative. They were quick in quali, so for them to see such a massive drop off in their race pace is like, that's puzzling, man. They need to sort that out really, really quick. Let's talk about Mercedes quickly before we talk about Ferrari. Baxty, you feel the pain, bruv. My heart is contracting as we start to approach this. I just can't even. I'm still not over it. Baxty and Mahad, if I'm honest with you. Let me pitch the question this way, Baxty. But for 3.4 seconds worth and 3.6 seconds worth of Lewis Hamilton pit stops, is that Lewis Hamilton's race to lose?
Yes, he would have been closer, and I think he would have had an opportunity to pass Max. He never got close enough to pass Max in those and even if he did get close enough, it would have been too little, too late, because Max would have fought tooth and nail to keep him behind. We've seen what they're like wheel to wheel. That it would have been tense. It would have been macho, but I think, the pit stops definitely cost Lewis a chance of trying to win the race. Whether he would have done or not is another matter altogether. I think with the pace Lewis had, he probably would have got past. Though I'm now really glad he didn't win that race.
Oh my God.
Really glad he didn't win that race. But Mercedes pit stops were just an absolute shambles shit show, basically. It was dreadful. I saw Toto's quotes today. I nearly threw my laptop out the window.
Listen to me. Yeah, no. Where does he? He lacks sensitivity, doesn't he, Toto? It's like, what are we? I had to check the facts, the timestamps on the quote to make sure it wasn't from like 24 months ago or something. I was like, what? Right, you just realising that now, Toto? You think this is a new phenomenon, slow Mercedes pit stops? But this has been going on for a while, sir, and it needs fixing. Mahad, talk to me, bro, because as a man with finer taste than I, as a McLaren fan, and one of the co-founders of McLaren Fan TV with my guy Peter on pole, talk to me, bro. How did McLaren have done a thing here? What lessons can Mercedes learn from world record pit stop holding McLaren, bruv? Like, how did McLaren sort this out?
I think it was a kind of a long-term process, all the way back to Andrea Seidel. Like, we knew we wasn't operationally good. We needed to work on that in terms of pit stop and strategies. And over time, even like 2021, we started to improve on the pit stops.
So what you
dramatically, like, bruv, training.
Are you saying Toto out, bruv? Is that what I'm getting from you?
To me, the quote that came out today, to publicly admit, you know what, we never really needed to be good at pit stops. We had a fast car. It's insane to me. Because think about it, in any type of walk of life or business, if you say, oh, one part of the business, we don't really need to be good at that because we're really good at this, is insane to me as a leader to say that publicly. Because what is the pit crew going to think? You know what? Toto said it's fine. Everybody's faster than us. Listen, on Pit Stop Racker, we have banged the door. We've banged the drum since for years saying Mercedes are not good at pit stops. And they don't care. And I don't understand why. It doesn't make sense. Listen, let's talk about this race in general, just this little bit. So you've lost time in the pit stops compared to your rivals. So McLaren's doing 2 seconds, Max is doing 2 point whatever. You're doing 3 point what? Yeah. On top of that, you've got the lockup that Lewis does that kind of lost him a little bit of time as well. And then on top of that, you've got him hanging out in a halfway strategy. Are we going to do a one stop? Are we going to do top? You're going to lose time there as well. So think about all that time added up and then how much you lost by. You've lost the race.
Gosh.
You've lost the race. Because people will pretend. I've had many a conversation with a Mercedes fan, pretending like the pit stops don't matter. That you guys have had maybe, I think, from the beginning of 2022 to the summer, just after the summer break, you've had 6 top 5 pit stops. 6 in Mercedes. That is unacceptable. This is below Alpine. This is below Aston Martin. We're talking about you're in the relegation zone of pit crews. For you to be a top Formula One team, that is unacceptable. One thing I'll tell you about Red Bull, even though during the old regs, they didn't have the fastest car, operationally, they were sound.
Mad.
Pit stops on point.
Levels.
Strategy on point. When they did nick a win here and there, it's because of that.
Yes.
Because that's the margins. And if you want to go toe-to-toe with Red Bull and you can't figure out the margins, people laugh at Ferrari. Ferrari are better at pit stops than Mercedes.
100%. 100% better.
They might have a stinker once in a while where it's 9 seconds, but they're around 2 seconds most of the time, 2 to 2.5.
Yeah, because those
are the basics.
Thank you, Mahad. That's the salient point there, right? This is basics that we're talking about. Keep making the point. Baxty's going to fall asleep. This is cure for insomnia. Me talking about this.
No. I was actually just looking at the DHL standings to see what was going on.
But if I looked at, I could get that up right now.
Yeah.
Like per
Alpha
Austin,
Tauri is a better pit crew.
Mercedes were
That's
of course they are,
AlphaTauri.
bruv. Mercedes were 8th, seventh. There we go.
Yeah.
Nowhere, bruv. Like, what are we doing? So listen,
Only Williams, Haas, and Alfa Romeo are worse than Mercedes at pit stops.
I'm. It's a wrap. It's done. It's done out here. That Toto Wolff is coming out now and taught not what he said, but when he said it, makes me realise that these dudes are just living in some different, like, just a different. Like the level of technical arrogance is like, I don't know, brother.
Is it a case of them saying, you know what, we just need to build a fast car, we've got Lewis Hamilton? Because that's the strategy we've been using for how long?
Well, that's what Nash has been saying for ages, right? Lewis and Inshallah is their strategy that they've always had. Just hope, give the car to Lewis and hope that he can do something, and it's nonsense, bro. I just...
what happened, like, in 2021, when it did become close, these were the margins.
Mad, and that's what I'm taught.
Yeah.
Don't get me, honestly. Baxty, tell me.
Look, I mean, Mercedes could get... Toto's right. Mercedes could get away with shit pit stops. They could get away with it because they had the fastest car, and it didn't really matter. It didn't matter who was in the other car with Lewis, whether it were Valtteri and or Nico. I mean, they were good at pit stops, certainly early on. I mean, I referenced that clip from the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix where they did the perfect double stack. It's not like they can't do pit stops. It's just clearly they've decided to prioritize the car and on-track operation aside from pit stops. But the game has changed. Red Bull spent all that time between 2014 and 2021 getting ready for a potential title fight, particularly from 2018. That was when they really started to turn it around. That they started becoming the best in class in pit stops. They're going to win the pit stop award again this year for like the 6th year in a row. Yeah, and they have been prepping, and they have got themselves to a point where they are the best in class. And Mercedes just haven't reacted to it. Red Bull are best in class in every single facet. That's the level now, not the level you set. You raised the bar in 2014. Red Bull have said, okay, we see your bar and we're going to raise it even further. And Mercedes have not reacted to that adequately. They've done it on the technical side by bringing in James Allison again and saying, right, you can beat Adrian Newey, let's do it. You've got the drivers, but strategy, pit stops, not working.
Oh my gosh, what are we doing?
They don't know that they're not the benchmark, Cam. They don't know that they're not the benchmark in it.
But how mad is that, bruv, that they've got like an unconscious incompetence that they don't need. That's the worst level, Mahad, that we're talking about, bruv. To not know that you've got deficiencies, that you are incompetent, is like, that's like lost battalion, bruv. It's almost like there's no coming back from that. Like, do you know what I mean?
I'll give you an example about McLaren. I'll give you an example of McLaren. McLaren have looked at Red Bull, said they're the bar, they're the level that we need to be at. So whatever they're doing in terms of strategy, in terms of pit stops, we need to aim for that and go beyond that, right? Mercedes are in a different space. Mercedes is like, we've won 8 constructors. We're going to do it our way. You've seen it with the way they've designed their car previously. We're not good. They're our rivals. We don't need to do that. We're going to do it our own way, and it's backfired. We are a year and something into the new regs of a 4-year regulation. We're nearly 2 years into the regs of a 4-year regulation, and only now they're saying we're going to change direction. What are you on about? How many direction changes are going to have?
Design philosophy wise, the level of technical arrogance at Brackley and Brixworth is like knows no bounds, but I don't even think I'm quantifying it correctly even now, as at 23rd of October. Like I think the mind boggles, chaps. Genuinely, I think this is ridiculous. They need to write white papers on this and dissect the levels of technical. I'm not even joking, man. I think it's properly like it's tragic.
But at the point now, they've backed themselves to the corner, to the point where the only way they're going to beat Red Bull is doing it their own way. But it's going to be too late by then.
No, but they can't, bro. No, but they can't. Like, okay, so what do you define doing it their own way? As far as Thomas said it really well on the last lap, right? You got to divide and conquer as far as the different elements of their team. As a race team, bruv, they can't do it their own way, because that own way, that's not going to work. Like, it hasn't worked for long. You need to recognise their deficiencies and do what the market leading bods are doing. And here's what they're doing. Here's what that looks like here. any area, not just the technical, because Toto talks like this sometimes. He's like, oh, we need to build ourselves a motor car that can like he compartmentalizes what he thinks is it needs to be in like full focus, and almost deprioritizes the pit stops as per the bloody comment that he's just come out and said. But here's what the problem is. All the other teams realise that this is F1, chaps, and fine margins are really, really important. Right? Championships have and always will be won and lost on split seconds. You only want to look to Abu Dhabi 21 as an example of that. Ergo, what you want to do, you want to be very, very stingy with how and when you lose time. Pit stops is a fundamental component of that. McLaren have done what they should have been doing, and they've just gone super stingy. They want to make themselves market leading pit stoppers, and they have done that. Look at that 1.80 the other day. I didn't even hear the bloody guns going. Lando didn't even know where he didn't even realize it was go time. So quickly are they turning around these, and that's because they're stingy with losing lap time. They're not looking to lose any, and this is what Red Bull have done so brilliantly over the past 36 months now. Mercedes, on the other bloody hand, are just that they're wasteful with lap time, as if it's 2014, 2016, and they've got this dominant car that's all conquering and nobody can't get. It's not that time anymore, and I think it's time that they wake up and smell the coffee, realise what's going on in front of you guys, because the urgency, Mercedes, should never be higher than now, because you've got one of the greatest to ever sit behind an F1 steering wheel in Sir Lewis Hamilton. You could argue that he has 3 seasons, 4 seasons or less. Can't afford to waste any more of those by putting this dude in subpar machinery and giving this dude subpar pit stops. Surely, chaps. Surely. I don't know.
And we've been saying for months that a bad pit stop could cost Lewis a win when they are such a scarcity in 2023. And it pretty much cost him the chance of going for it yesterday. And we've been saying that for months.
Bro.
Wasn't last year a year of learning? Where was the learning? If you haven't got a fast car, just can you work on other things?
It's been so focused on the car. That's the thing. They've been all about the car, and they've just let the other things slip. Whereas Red Bull, even though they're now dominant, aren't letting it slip. They're still going, no, we still want to be the best in class. We want that DHL award in our garage, and be able to show that off and be like, yeah, we're still the best. They've still got best in class strategy with Hannah Schmidt.
Nails it, bro. She doesn't miss ever.
No.
Oh,
yesterday, nailed it.
Perfect. Oh, God.
Do you know what it is as well? I think sometimes even to move away from pit stops, the strategy as well doesn't seem to react when stuff is going on.
No, they don't, bro, because they move like this.
Yesterday was more about Red Bull reacted to McLaren, McLaren reacted to Red Bull. It was between those two.
Yeah.
And it's like Mercedes was out of sync. They were doing their own thing. Maybe that's symbolic of the thinking. Like, why go long? Like, Leclerc and Ferrari, they knew from the beginning of the race that they're going to do a one-stopper. But this was kind of like, are we going to do one? Are we not? Let's hang out there for a little bit.
Mad, you know what, Mad? I think you've got, I know what you're going with there, but I think you term it slightly incorrectly. Here's what I saw, and I commented as much yesterday with Baxty. I saw a McLaren team that were confident in their line of travel strategically. This was their apex predator, and they flexed it. They considered other things, but they this is our path, and we're going to travel this path, right? Red Bull similar, right? They had their apex predator strategy, and they just were like, this is our line and we're following this line. Mercedes did this thing where they're almost they're freestyling. They're M&M at 8 Mile, right? They're looking around themselves and they're saying, well, so they're doing that. They're flexing and reactive rather than proactive. And I think that's half their problem, bro. If they don't have, do you know what I mean? It's almost like they don't have the chutzpah to sit down and say, right, then boom, this is us. This is the line that we're going to travel. They're kind of like, they're always asking themselves questions. There's too many people around that table making a decision. You know what I mean? You want a Hannah who's just like, all right, then, you know what, Christian? This is the way that I think we need to get. This is the quickest way from lights to flag around there. This is what I think we need to do. Horner trusts Hannah because she rarely gets it wrong. And they're just like, all right, then boom. that I will empower you to make a decision and take a risk. Whereas at Mercedes, because there's too many bloody heads around the table, they're all trying to do this like this decision by commission, and by the time, do you know what I mean? By the time they've actually made a decision, the optimal strategies pass them by, and it's just like, oh, you know what, chaps, I can't even talk about Mercedes anymore because my blood pressure's going to go mad. It's too much, chaps. I've just had enough. I just can't believe that we are here, man. Costing Lewis Hamilton yesterday the chance to fight for the top step of the podium. I mean, this is DEFCON. As far as these pit stops, and listen, I will say this, not to do the lap of honour, yeah, but there were lots of people in the community that were like, well, where's the bulk of the lap time going to come from? Yeah, where's fix the car, worry about the pit stops later. Well, no, the process is to continuously develop everything that could gain you lap time materially. And look, the chickens came home to Reese yesterday, didn't they? And pit stops ultimately may have cost the 7-time champion his first race victory in damn near 2 years, of course, chaps. Anyway, I digress. Should we talk about in more positive news, lads? Should we talk about Checo Perez? Oh my God. What's next for this chap, Mahad? Is he going to... Go on, I'll word the question this way. Checo Perez at Red Bull at race 1, 2024. Are you buying or selling that, bro?
I think it's going to happen. I think the whole Perez situation is more to do with this guy is not a Red Bull driver. We've given him a contract. We can't just send him to AlphaTauri. We haven't got control over this person as we do with other drivers, like Hirao.
This is true.
We're going to have to pay him a significant amount of money for him to leave. And Red Bull are not used to being in that situation. So that's why you keep hearing in the public, oh yeah, he's going to be driving in 2024 and so on, because they're going to have to leverage and have to negotiate some sort of buyout if they feel like this is not the guy. And it depends on the competition. If the competition is closer to you, then you have to get rid of Perez. If it's the same distance in terms of performance to the rest of the grid, you don't need to get rid of Perez. Let him see out his contract. Sayonara at the end of 2024. So it's really a balance. He's not performing ever since whatever happened in Miami, because even to now, my brain can't comprehend how you don't win Miami and you let Max do that to you. Especially with what was going on in Baku and Saudi. He was on a good roll, you know?
He was good.
But his confidence is absolutely just spent at the moment. He's not even performing. I saw some stat about how much people have out-qualified him on the grid.
Everyone, like, all the time.
It's insane. Lando Norris was in a Fanta can for like 8 races. How is he out? How is he like 15 races ahead of you in terms of head-to-head in quality? So it's not something that Red Bull can make a decision about now. I don't think it's going to be a case of they're just going to sack him at the end of the season unless he does something insane, like crash into Max or something.
Poor mate,
in the last couple of races. I think it's just about the contractual situation, because I'm telling you now, if he was a Red Bull driver, he'd be out of time right now.
Oh my goodness. Baxty, talk to me, bruv. Do you believe that, because Ted said something he's interested on his notebook, right? He breathed air into the rumour that if Checo Perez doesn't achieve second in a championship this year, that he won't start another race for Red Bull next year. Buying or selling, Baxty?
I think the events of the last 24 hours, I think he's probably going to stay, because the gap now to Lewis for PT is 39 points.
Yeah.
So unless he DNFs a couple of times and maybe Lewis wins one or gets on the podium in every race from here until the end of the season, it's possible, but I don't see it happening. I thought Checo actually had a really good weekend by his recent standards. You know, finished P4 after disqualification, you know, did a really good job. Looked to be in had more synchronicity with the car, I feel, you know, that he's had in the past. And you know, he will be feeling the pressure, because if he doesn't get P2, then he's out the door. But no, I think he'll be there. I completely agree with what Mahad said about paying out. They're not going to want to do that, because Checo, yes, he brings a lot of money, but there is strings attached to that. I think they'll let him see out his contract and they'll have an amicable parting of the ways. Because look, Checo ultimately did his job. He was brought there to help Max win a championship, and he did that. And since then, he's had a free hit because they haven't bought him to challenge Max. They've bought him to support. Yeah, and he has done that when he's needed to. But to challenge Max, no. He's not the driver to do that.
He hasn't got that in his locker, has he? I feel really, really sad talking about Checo Perez, And I know that F1 is a very cutthroat sport and will always be super ruthless, especially framed in terms of the balls that are red. But I don't know, chaps. It's hard to drive a car whose characteristics doesn't suit your driving style, right? It is, and it will always be in F1. Interestingly, though, as well, I don't know if you guys watched The Notebook. It was crazy to see the crowd's reaction to Checo Perez in that part of the world. That he was like the second coming. He was properly like the way he had like Junior there, and like the crowd were like dying to get at him. It was like, it reminded me of Muhammad Ali in When We Were Kings, when he's in like Zaire and they're doing the Ali Boumé. It was proper like hero worship, crazy. Plus the fact that they were booing Max Verstappen on the podium for depending on who you talk to about the reasons. Maybe it was the politician, maybe they were Checo Perez fans and just wanted to get at Max and voice their disapproval. Techie, man, I don't know. I think I agree with you, Baxty. After yesterday's events, I think Checo's probably lucked out, but more so because of the fan reaction than Lewis's points. I just think it'd be really hard to sack somebody, to be so cutthroat about a chap who has that much kind of sway and buying power behind him, right? I don't know.
Mate, it's just Red Bull. They don't care.
I know you're right, bro. You're
They
right.
don't care. I'll tell you, they don't care. 100%.
They don't give a shit.
They don't care about him bringing money in commercially. They don't care about him personally. He's there to do a job. He's done his job. He's like a contractor. He's done his job. If I had him to do a job, he's enabled Max Verstappen to win championships. He himself, when Max Verstappen doesn't win, bar Singapore, he wins the race. So this, and I think a lot of people have a lot of expectations on what a second driver should be. I think there's a lot of confusion. Oh, you don't want to be too close to the number one driver because that we don't want conflict in the team. But if you're too far away, it's an issue, and it's like you're gonna have to pick your poison there. And I think Perez has just done his job, and I think he's good enough to be a Formula One driver. Max makes people look average.
Isn't that the truth, Mad?
It's just how it is.
That's just the cost of doing business at Red Bull, so long as Max Verstappen's around, just the cost of doing business, brother, and that's crazy. But I don't know. I digress. It's techie. Go on then, chaps. Let's talk about Ferrari very quickly, because I got a bit obsessed with Charles. I thought Charles Leclerc. I bet quite a lot of money that Charles Leclerc was going to win the Grand Prix on the back of, I know, Baxty, it's chaos, bro. Okay,
was that pole conversion rate? My God.
You know what it was, Baxty? Hear me. Hear my thought process. So I watched his onboarding quali, and all the while knowing that they have this, there is a performance gap between race and quali for Ferrari, absolutely. But here was my thought process. If he's matching Max Verstappen and okay, so they both left 0.2. Max left 0.2 on the table at turn 1 by virtue of the lockup. Charles did exactly the same at turn 19. So you're matching Max Verstappen in quali, plus, as Mahad said very eloquently earlier on, this is supposed to be a Ferrari track, right? Historically, they've gone very well around here. I just thought, and plus they were 8-1. Charles Leclerc was 8-1. I was like, nah, that doesn't sound right. I'm not having that. I will take that. I will take a bit of that. The question then, chaps. Mahad, I'll come to you first, bruv. Is Project Ferrari in 2023 a failure? Is Frederick Vasseur failing this team? Are they regressing more than they're progressing?
Do you know what? I think I'm struggling to think this team has improved under Vasseur rather than Bonotto. I feel like you've lost the technical excellence of Bonotto, and you got Vasseur who kind of manages the relationship. And yeah, they've improved a little bit on pit stops and a little bit on strategy, but the strategy still have a bit of stinkers here and there. The car is not progressing in that sense. Like, is it just set up for quali and just hope for the best?
I don't understand it, man.
Every single race weekend.
Genuinely, it makes no sense to me. It's not like I didn't think about this before I put a couple of quid down at Paddy Power. Like, I don't understand why the car can be so good in quali and so bad in the race. Relatively makes no. And I've tried to understand it. I don't get it.
Obviously, it's the relationship between whatever the chassis is and the tire deg. I think they've got a tire deg issue with the same as McLaren in terms of they need a new chassis to kind of resolve that situation. You can't really do anything now, and that's the same with McLaren as well. They need a new chassis to kind of deal with that. But with Ferrari, I feel like the same. Like, what's the plan at the start of the race? I'm going to put Leclerc on a one stop, even though we got high deck.
That is
knowing that you have high deck.
Bonkers.
You did a sprint race prior. You
Bonkers.
know the situation, and then you put Sainz on a preferred strategy, and you got somebody that goes from first to sixth, and now you got Sainz ending up on the podium. The math's not massing. It's not working. I don't understand what the situation is. Vasseur was supposed to be the person that turns the ship around. It seems like they've done a 360.
Bro, it's not very good, is it? It's not very good. I'd argue, though, Mahad, I don't think the tyre deg point, we've all known that they've had this issue. It's a tyre to that car, right? But it can't just be that, right? Because if it were that, they'd be quick at the outset in the race, and then the tyre deg issue would, you know what I mean, come to the... Okay, so maybe you could argue that Charles Leclerc is managing it from the outset, but I just don't think they're slow. It's almost like as soon as the lights go out, it's just a different car, I think. Baxty, bro, that's what I'm saying. What am I missing here, Baxty? Fill in the gaps, bro, because I don't understand.
I gave up a long time ago trying to explain Ferrari. As I've said repeatedly this weekend, there are a few certainties in life: death, taxes, and a Ferrari disaster class. You know that's it. I just. Yeah, I mean, look, they've got a problem with the tyres. Maybe they know what the fix is, but they can't because of the cost cap, and they're in that sort of similar boat to Mercedes that they kind of have to ride it out and wait until next year to make a bigger jump forward than they would like. Plus, we knew that they were not going to make the jump forward as much this year because they're going through a major management change, and that takes time to bed in. You know, even when Arriva Bene came to the team, it took them about a year to get really settled and go for the championship in 2017 and 2018. So I think if they're not at the races next year, then I think there will need to be a major technical overhaul at Ferrari. Because I still feel like the concept of that car is solid. There was a reason why they were the fastest car for probably the first half of last year. So that they clearly understand their concept, but they just, maybe the fix for the tyres is not where they want it to be, and they can't get to it just yet because of the cost cap. So like Mercedes, I'm willing to give them until next year, but if they're in the same situation next year, then there's going to have to be some big changes.
Oh, Gonzo. Still very confused, lads. I don't understand the whys with this one, and I feel like I should. But again, that makes me think there's something fundamentally flawed with that design philosophy of at Scuderia Ferrari. It just doesn't make sense, chaps. How can you be so bloody fast in quali and so slow in the race? Rhetorical question. Go on then, Mahad. Do me for a victory lap on McLaren. And again, for context, I was the last time or time before last when I saw your partner in crime, Peter, and again, co-founder of McLaren Fan TV. Go and check that out on YouTube for some market-leading F1 content. Last time I spoke to him, I said, you know what? McLaren are done out here, mate. They've got no chance. Peter forecast that McLaren were going to turn this around in this season, the season that is 2023. And I accused your partner in crime of smoking something very insidious. I was like, what are you talking about? And now, Mahad, apparently Cameron F1's got to eat some humble pie, because if there were a pretender to the Red Bull throne, then I don't know, if not McLaren, then who, bruv? How have you lot done it?
I think it's been a kind of a realization and a bit of a long journey that people don't really know about. But I think the realization that the car is not good, and Zach Brown identifying as that James Key might be the culprit for this. Back all the way back in Singapore last year, because we came to that new regs not wanting to be anywhere like in the midfield. We wanted to be in that conversation with your Mercedes and your Ferraris and your Red Bulls. So going back to that, having already seen, look, this car's not really going to be good, taking that step back and taking that sacrifice and saying, look, James Key, we're going to get rid of you. This is what we call action in play, because a lot of teams will stick by their man. But Zach Brown was like, no, let's just keep it moving, because we haven't got time to waste within these regulations. And he's brought in people that were not utilized within the team. We're talking about your Peter Pedromos. We're talking about your Patrick Finn. We're talking about people that are in the team that have the expertise, but were kind of, by all reports, were in a dictatorship under James Key, where everything had to go through him. And if he didn't really approve of it, you had to go out the window. So now you've got Andrea Stella, somebody that's actually technically guided, somebody that was behind the kind of success of the 2020 and 2021 car, because it was based on him and Pat Fry and Peter Pedromo working on that car. Somebody with a technical background to actually come in and do that leadership. And not only, I remember the first interview he had, he said, I need to look at that factory and see what's going on in there.
Wow.
And have to look at the technical side. Because, yeah, I think we've got a good team here. We've got good drivers. We've got operationally sound in terms of pit stop strategies on, but that technical side, we need to sort that out. And he made that restructure. He made it happen. This is action in progress.
Love that, bro. I love
action
that.
in progress. And they took the sacrifice of saying, we're not going to have a good car for the first half of the year. But by Austria, by Canada, I think Canada was the initial one, and then they pushed it back to Austria. We're going to be in the right direction, because we're going to utilize the people that are already here. People like Neil Oatley, somebody that won a championship in 1980 in the ground effect era with Alan Jones. People that actually know about ground effect cars. Let's bring them into the fold and actually use our internal expertise. And although we're kind of hampered by using a wind tunnel in Toyota in Germany and having all of the kind of infrastructure holding us back, now all of that's in play, I think it bodes well for the future as well, because there's not really excuses now. You've got bringing in people like Rob Marshall, bringing in like David Sanchez. You're collecting all the gemstones from other teams. And hopefully Andrea Stella can give them the car, because I feel like everything else was there. Now we've got Piastri. What a signing, inspired signing.
Mate.
That's an that is a team that identifies Daniel Ricciardo can't drive this car. We need to go get we need to get somebody else potentially. And it's also a kind of protection for the team, because if Lando Norris goes, guess what? We've got Oscar Piastri.
Love it, bruv. I love it.
So everything's tactical. Everything makes sense
planning.
in terms of the management decisions by Zach Brown, in terms of the technical guidance that Andrea Stella's moving forward, and the calmness that he's presiding over the team. Smart I feel stuff. Like it's moving in the right direction, and there's an exception of the limitations within the team, and we understand that as fans, and it's been quite open and clear. And I feel like sometimes other teams don't have that, where they've been quite honest about the situation and where they want to go, and he delivered every single thing that he's ever said. So I could only say it's positive. For me to say, oh yeah, we wasn't that good, I could complain about our strategy on Saturday or Friday, because we used our hard tires. We didn't use hard tires on Friday. We used the medium, so we didn't even have a medium to put on in the race. So that's but we kind of made the best out of the situation anyway. So you made an error on Friday, but we made the best out of the situation on the Sunday. it's kind of like we understand that, and I shouldn't be moaning about we didn't get second or first, because we were 17th and 18th in Miami, so the progress is there. It's accelerating well, and I feel like every single upgrade works. So there's a fundamental understanding of the car, and when I see other teams, I still see that understanding, and that bodes well for me and McLaren.
Brother, it's the understanding of limitations, isn't it? That is the key word with my Mercedes cap very firmly on. Mahad, I'm going to give you the final word as we round third base on this, because this is a topic that's been killing me and that I've argued back and forth on this platform with Shez on, and will continue to. Talk to me about Oscar Piastri versus Lando Norris in these terms. Which one of the two has... Because, I mean, you're infinitely more knowledgeable on this McLaren circumstance than I. Of the two, which of them has the... If we're talking in terms of potential, which one of them could be that guy? Which one of them's better than the other? If you got to pick between Oscar and Lando, I'm curious, bro.
If I say who's better, like
not
right now,
not now,
Norris.
not now, because that's unfair to Oscar. But each of them in their final form over the next 5 to 10, which of them are you picking?
Piastri is limitless.
Oh, there it is.
The kid is unreal. I knew from the second race in Saudi, I said, what the hell was going on? The guy stuck it in Q3 with the car the slowest on the straights in Jeddah. How do you do that? You're the slowest car on the straights. So that means he's making up all the time in the corners in Jeddah. So the raw talent is already there. And not to say Lando Norris hasn't got the talent. Lando Norris is absolutely exceptional. You have to remember, look, Lando Norris is 24, Oscar Piastri is 23. These people, we don't know their limits at all. Oscar Piastri has hit the ground running straight away, considering he's not raced since 2021 in F2. To do this. And I reckon he was put on ice by Alpine after the contract situation. He weren't getting in no Alpines. They weren't letting him test at nothing. So for him to come in that raw and just have all the fundamentals there already. Like, even though he had a bad weekend, he had a typical rookie weekend this weekend.
True.
But all the fundamentals are there. And I think his ceiling is limitless. Lando Norris, we've seen a lot of him, but we've not seen a lot of him in a race-winning car.
Yeah. You know what, brother? I hear you, but I feel like some of the Piastri hive have fallen foul of a bit of recency bias, right? Because I feel like he's brilliant. They get it twisted, and his potential is limitless. I like the way you've termed that. But there is a lot to learn in the near term as far as race management, tyre management. And again, you wouldn't expect anything less with a rookie. But I just think some people are talking, not Shez, but some people are talking like Piastri is Lewis Hamilton in 07 as an example. And that's...
No. I saw that article.
Yeah, let's not do... And to be fair to the content of the article, like, people have twisted it, people have read into it what they wanted to, rather than... I think the premise was that Oscar is the best rookie since Lewis in 07, not that he's better or equal to Lewis in 07, but nevertheless, that's the way people have taken it. But I don't think we should put him in that sentence. Not fair to Oscar. Right then, chaps, you guys have been legends, man. I enjoyed that. That feels like I don't know. I feel like it's been cathartic for me. I've gotten all of the Mercedes stress off my chest, and I can go back to the missus now and try and avoid and divorce. Mahad, you've been a legend, bruv. Love you to death, bruv. That has been at Mahad PSF. I've remembered it. Legend of the Pit Stop Fracker on YouTube. Legend of McLaren Fan TV on YouTube. Go and check out that fella. If you're not subscribed to him already, if you're not listening to either of those podcasts on all podcasting platforms, what are you doing with your life? That has been my co-host, Baxty B, at Baxty B on Twitter, Baxty BF1 on the YouTubes. Go and subscribe to that dude again. Industry leading, market leading F1 content. Do me a favor before you leave, like, comment, subscribe this video. If you're listening on a podcasting platform, scroll to the top and leave us 5 stars, because that helps more than you might know. That has been another Shakedown. As always, we'll see you same time, same place next week. Between now and then, remember to look but never stare.